Alright, so I'm going to start unplugging everything and then we're going to run through it. It's not very long and it's very short and it's very simple. So be right back. Alright, we're back. So I have disabled everything here in the roughness. I've left them plugged in, but everything's been disabled and we're going to go step by step. So right off the bat, I do have a boolean for whether it's wet or not. So if you create a switch grayscale, because roughness is in grayscale, you can expose a new graph input, call this wet like this. I'm going to call it wet tutorial. And by default, I'm going to set it to false because I don't want the wet version to be the default version. Then we hit OK, and then it makes that option blue. So now if you double click outside into the graph, you can go to preview, and then you'll see it here. And then whenever you turn this on or off, it'll change your graph. Because the switch grayscales have two inputs, a true and a false. So you can have one version plugged into one spot and then the other into the other spot, and then you can switch between the two. So I'm just going to delete that. And then if you go to parameters, this is where you see like what you just made, and you can edit it here. So I'm going to delete that one because I don't need it. I already have my wet one here. So we're going to start with two uniform colors because we start off with our boolean. Now, if this is by default false, then the dry version going forward, dry is going to go into false and wet is going to go into true. So we have two uniforms. This one is the dry version, and you can tell because it's got a higher value than this one. Because I wanted to have like a different base if it's going to be wet versus a different one where if it's going to be dry. So if we double click in the background here and I go to preview and I turn it on, you can see it changing. See, this one's less rough because it's wet, and if I turn it off, it's a little rougher. So then after that, that's just like our initial coding. After that, we add some surface roughness breakup. You can see here, if we get real close. It's very subtle, and you can see here in the 2D view. I use a grayscale uniform color set to 16 by 16, and I use a full white, and then I use a levels here, and I set this level to 0.05, very subtle, and I am pulling from the concrete noise. So this is that overall noise that we added on the surface. So I pull from the levels in this case, and then I feed that into the levels here, and then into a copy blend. So then we start breaking up those little pockets with a little bit of roughness. I don't know why these are a little bit off their sockets, but okay. Then we add these little like scratch marks or overall roughness, directional roughness stuff here. So we pull from the max light. So this is when we merge them together, both directions. Then we use a levels here into the opacity, and then another white uniform color. And now you can see that we're getting some nice little details on the contrast of the roughness. So you turn it off and on. And this is going all over all of them. Then I do like another similar pass, but this is like a macro wall, like I said. This is a grunge rough dirty. Then I use a levels here, Actually, I didn't do anything with this levels. So I just have it there for looks. Goes into the opacity, uniform white, and then I do max lighten and I do 0.15. So here you can see the difference. So we're just adding like this large overall roughness on top. Then we add this guy, which is a, I increased the tiling on this guy, and I think this looks like a moisture noise. Let's find out. Let's follow it. Follow the road. So yeah, it's our moisture noise after our auto levels. And then I don't want all this gray value in between. I want to tighten it up a bit. Oh god, I need to sneeze. So I use a scan to get rid of some of those in-between values. So then I kind of have like a more contrasty look between dark and light. Then I use a levels here. Same thing, uniform white. And then we go from this to this. And again, we're just layering on more and more. Then we go to the cracks. Hold on, I need to change my music. Okay, so here we are adding the cracks roughness. So we are pulling from, again, before the concrete cracks, this blend mode here, we're pulling from that guy into a blur. Now, it's very hard to see. Then I use a normals here, and I think I just used I clicked the auto levels button. Actually, no, I don't. Just round these out for you guys. Or maybe I should have. Actually, no, it's way too strong now. Yeah, that should be good. So we pull from there, we do a blur, very subtle blur. We use a levels here to tighten up the, more than just tighten up, I guess, so we can actually see it. And again, this is just like a blurred version of the cracks because I kind of want to add like some blurring around it. Otherwise, it would be only on the cracks and it would be too, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but similar to what we did up here with the blurring of the edges, where we added like a blurred version and then we added a more accurate version. That's what I'm trying to do here. I guess we're here, yeah. So then we have like our blurred version. And this is set to copy. And then we have a white on top. So then you can see here. And then here, we're actually pulling from the base color stuff. Yeah, this is our our spots. Our spots 30. We'll pull from before the levels into another levels because we need different values. And actually nothing really changed. It's just here as a placeholder so that it has like a nice connection. I changed the uniform color here to 0.3 into a copy. And then you can see right here. Wait, where'd it go? Right here, you can see it. It's very subtle. And you can see it right here in the 3D view right here. If you look over on this spot right here. And then we move on to, what's this? Oh, our scratchies. So our actual scratches. So we pull from before the levels as usual into another levels. And then I just hit auto levels and I changed the level out high to 0.125 into a copy, into a white uniform. So you can see this one right here. So we go from that to that. And let's find these in the 3D. So you can see it right here. Again, very subtle. I don't want these things to be too overpowering because then they'll be really noticeable. And when you make things like these scratches that repeat all over your graph, it'll be the tiling would be very noticeable. Also, these are very shallow cracks. So you have to think about like the roughness value as well, due to how deep your scratches are and stuff. All right, what's this? Okay, so yeah, this is the equivalent of what we did up here with the color, but now we're doing it with the roughness in a way. So if we look here, this is with it turned off, and then on, you can see that we kind of have some roughness on the edges here, and that's a good way to like kind of break up the roughness going from one tile to the other. Otherwise, it just kind of looks the same. But this way, you kind of have like some breakup in the edges. Now, you could just use this one, and you can see the difference if I just plug it into there. But obviously, this is way too noticeable. It's way too straight. It's way too perfect. It's way too, you know, um, generic, I guess. So basically, we took this information and I broke it up a bunch. And then we got this, which is a little bit more subtle. And then even if you want to make it more noticeable, you could just increase this. And I'll show you how you can tweak it, but you know, this is what I wanted. So what we did here is we took, what do we take? Let's follow the path. Damn, we're going all the way back. Okay. Yeah, we're going all the way back. Okay, so from the pattern shape, or from the very start, just before we go to the edge roundness, pull a different, I think, yeah, we should have already started this road. So we're going to continue from that road that we made earlier in the previous part. And we're going to continue all the way down. You can see the highlighted white there. And then here we're going to split up into a non-uniform. Because our tiles are all squares, I don't really care for all this other information for the sockets, the screws, this little like indents and stuff. I don't care for any of that. I just want the tiles. So I use a non-uniform blur to blur the tiles by themselves within themselves again. And then here I use a levels to increase it by changing the level in mid. So then we go from this to this. And I invert it, so then you can start kind of seeing, okay, now since we invert it, now we're using this white to visualize where the effect or the range of the effect of the roughness will be. And then I do a slope blur grayscale set to max because I want this to kind of push out and not inward. If you use an in, it's going to cut into the white. I wanted it to go outside. Now for this case, I do want the breakup, because if I don't have this vector warp, then it will look like this, where it's continuing the noise from one to the other tile. And then for this vector warp, we pull from, I think that's the purlin. Yeah, so we're using the purlin noise for this one. And then our vector warp using the orange road as usual. That's going to feed into the slope blur grayscale. That way we can blur our line so that it's not perfect like this. Then this goes into a multiply set to 0.825. And then we break off from the invert grayscale. So from this guy, we break off, create a new road for it. And that, don't worry about where it connects to yet. Let's worry about this guy. So we're going to take that same parallel noise. So we're going to pull from that same parallel noise road. And then I use the levels here to play around with the level in mid to 0.6. Everything else stays this, or I also increase the level out low to 0.1. Into another vector warp grayscale. Just checking something real quick. Okay, I was confused why the tiling on this one looks like this and the tiling on this one looks like this when there's no like transform 2D doubling the tiling. And then I was like, wait a second, what's happening? It's driving me nuts. And then I dragged it out and I noticed that there was a transform 2D under it. So that explains why there's a gap here. I think it's because I had to move my entire graph and I accidentally placed it on top. But anyways, we're good. So yeah, so we're gonna put from that parallel noise into a transform 2D, increase the tiling. We're doubling the tiling. We use our levels here. Then we vector warp it to break it up. And then we put that on the top slot there. So then we go from this to this. And basically I wanted to break up this line some more. So we go from this to this. So we're adding some like subtle changes to it so it's not perfectly straight. And then once we do that, then I mess around with it with the parallel noise so that it's not, you can see how even it is. So I want to break that up even more. So I use a multiply and then I use a subtract here, set very low to 0.25. And then I have a black and white spots too. I should probably drag from this guy. So let's do it the right way. Where am I? Over here, okay. So which one's the black and white? Is it this guy? Yeah, it's that guy. So we need him to be over here. So I'm just gonna make a connector anywhere for now. And then I'm gonna drag it into a transform 2D. And then I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm just gonna plug that in there. Delete that guy, put him back in his spot, and then just make sure that see now, here, I'm panning my screen under this black icon here, so that when I lose sight of where it's supposed to go, because I need to click and drag this guy, I know that he belongs under this guy. That's usually how I go about matching up my stuff. Okay, so we rotated him 90 degrees so that he's different than all the other ones, into a vector warp, into a subtract by 0.25. And then you can see here that we're going from this and we're adding some more interesting breakup to it. And then we take that original invert grayscale and then plug it into the top into max lighten, and we make it very low. And then we go from this, and we want to bring back a little bit of that uniform. Obviously, that's just to show you, but we want to bring some of it back. So actually, let's go with like 0.25 maybe. Bring back a little bit more of it. And then I use a levels here, 0.625, and then we feed that into a copy, into a white uniform, and then that's how we get our edges there. Then we have a dirt 2, a default one into a histogram scan, into a blur, into our vector warp grayscale, and we're using the orange road as usual. I think this is the last time we use it. Into a levels. I believe I just hit auto levels, and then whatever it gives you, that's what you should go with. Into the opacity, into a white uniform. And then actually what we did here is we use subtract because I want to add some glossy or low roughness spots. So if we get a good angle here and we turn it on and off. So like right up here. See, there are some spots that are Wait a second, am I using the same dirt that I used to make the freckles? No way. Oh my god, I am. I can explain. Okay, so no wonder they were kind of falling on the same spots. What I want to do then is just change the seed to a different seed. That way they're not landing on the same spot. Whoops. Rookie mistake. Alright. Now here we add the base to the base roughness for the screws. Let me change my music again. Okay. So yeah, so we just take the same mask that we took for the base color, which is this guy here. And again, we go to that histogram scan. We can probably label this screw mask. And then default levels. And then we just use a copy. And then because we're using copy, then whatever color this guy is will dictate what the mask is. So we're using 0.15 to get, you know, a metal-ish roughness value. Then we go and we add some detail to the roughness of the screws. So if you look here, the screws are like perfectly clean. So I want to break that up. So I take my black and white spots 2 and I blur it a tiny bit. And then I multiply it with the mask again after the levels here. And then we get this. And then I use that to copy it with a uniform value of 0.56 so that our screws have a little bit of roughness to them. So that they're not perfectly clean. So there's some breakup even on the screws. Then we have a blur. I don't know what it's blur. Okay, it's blurring those freckles now. So if we go follow this road back, yeah, we go to the concrete freckles before the levels. We're pulling from this guy, the subtract blend. Then we blur it a little bit. So if we turn this on and off, you can see the difference there. So we blur it just a tiny bit. Otherwise it would be exact to the holes and then that would be unnoticeable. So I wanted to do some blurring, some roughness changing around it to make it more contrasty. Then here, I think I just do auto levels. So whatever it is that you have here, just do an auto levels on this guy and then lower the level out high. So then you can see here that we have like these rougher spots, and we're using a uniform color, a white one. And then here we use our dirt, I think. No, not yet. We take an ambient occlusion, and this ambient occlusion is pulling from after everything. So after the height is done, somewhere between the end and the levels holding it down over here, we do another ambient occlusion. This one's also ray tracing, so RTAO. You can use the normal one if you want. Just make sure you change your height scale here. Then we invert it. Then I use a levels to play around with the values. So I just use 0.55 into a white uniform copy. So then we go from this to this. So now the recesses and stuff, the pockets, the sockets, whatever you want to call them, now it's getting some love. And now it's helping kind of bring everything back together with the minor details. Then here I add another like big macro roughness change. So if you look here in this angle, we go from this to this. And again, this is just like, stuff going on top of the surface of the tiles. So I take a grunge map 1, play around with it, and then I use a levels here, very subtle 0.1, and then I use subtract because I want to subtract from the roughness, because here we start losing the contrast a little bit. Everything's kind of looking kind of the same, even though it's not. But this way, we kind of add contrast to the overallness of our roughness, like a big macro detail. And again, I don't warp this because I want this to carry over from one tile to the other. I don't want to worry about splitting that up. Then here we use our dirt mask. So we pull from our dirt into a levels 0.75. Oh, I think that's an F35 flying over. 1 second. Okay, I think it's gone now. So 0.75 for the dirt mask into a copy, into a white uniform. And now you can see we're adding another layer, but this one's a little tighter because obviously it's the dirt mask. So then we go from this, sorry, not that, from this to adding this layer to then adding this layer of super high value roughness. And again, that's like another layer of contrast. So it adds a very good breakup between, like, the shiny surface and then the corners and stuff. Okay. Now that technically would be the end, and then I would have but you don't even need this if you just want, this version. But now we're gonna add, this is like the puddles here. So let's turn on, so at the end of this, I have a sharpen set to very low values. Because if the sharpen looks really noticeable on roughness. So we go from this to that, and if you leave it at 1, wait, oh, I don't see anything because it's set to, there we go. So if we change this to 0.25, you start getting like these little pixels you can see there. So yeah, I don't like going too crazy on the sharpen on the roughness. Well, actually, you just sharpen with anything really. Okay, so let's undo that connection. I don't want to break my graph here. Okay, turn that back on. Go down to 0.25. All right, so the way I made the moist wet look was I started with, I think this is a clouds 2. So we need these two guys. Um, First of all, this is bothering me because this should be here. So we need this, the clouds 2. And then the Perlin noise, and then we rotate the Perlin noise, and we rotate the clouds 2. So let's start with the clouds 2 here. I blur it with a very high value, if we get your quality up. So then we get this, which kind of looks like a Perlin noise, funny enough. And then I use a position to get a nice little blob from it. Now I can probably just get away with doing this one, but at the time I wanted to mix two of them together. And then you get this. So actually let's clean this up a bit. Let's actually what I suggest you do is just do this bottom one and then just plug this in here. But I'm gonna leave mine as it is. So then we have our Perlin noise here. Same thing, histogram scan it, contrast all the way up. I don't want any of this. I just want it to be like this. So then I add the 2. But like I said, you can skip this part and just kind of go use this as the last one. So then these are puddles, and then if you want to increase the amount or the size, you can play around with this. And I'll show you that in real time when we get to it. And then we take away from this Perlin noise. And then after we add them, I use a directional warp to warp it. That way they're not like perfect blobs. And then you can play around with how much you want to warp it. And again, I just did this quickly, so you obviously I would have to look at references more and stuff, but just to give you a general idea. And then I blur it into oblivion to get this nice smooth gradient transition. And you'll see what that does. And then here I just kind of move it to place it in a more interesting spot. Nothing special. I just move it to a place where I liked it. And you can see the settings there. And then that feeds into the opacity of this blend after the sharpen. Now you're not going to see anything because I need to turn on the boolean. So let me do that. And then I have a just pure black uniform grayscale or uniform color grayscale set to black because it's supposed to be wet. So then that goes into the opacity. So now you can see we have this very smooth transition because of our blur. If we didn't have this blur, it would look like this. And obviously that's not how, wetness behaves. So we have that blur set to really high to give us a nice contrast. And you can tighten it up if you want. Let's say you want something like this you can do, or actually that doesn't look too good, but maybe like around like 5 probably starts looking okay. But I went with, what was it, 20? Wait, was it 20? What was it? No, it was 10. So 10 is what I went with. And then this blend is going to feed into another switch grayscale, but into the true. And then, see, this should be here. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so then this goes into the false, which is the dry version, and then that goes into your roughness. So we went from that to that. Now now this stuff, this wet stuff that we just did, only belongs to the roughness, and there's nothing in the normal. So if you want to add the puddly look, if you want to have this where it actually shows up in the normal, so you can see here, it's kind of hard to tell, but actually, can I do this? No, not that. Can I just do a normal? I need a normal. Oh no, I need to plug in a grayscale. But I guess we can do. Maybe I can just do this. So let's say I turn this up to 50. So you can see here that okay, it looks crazy, but just bear with me. If you want to be able to have it actually have the puddle pop off or pop out in the normal, then we need to do some normal work here. And what I did was I took after the transform 2D into it splits into two, but we'll split this into the background of this blend, set to min darken and 0.05, and then I have a clouds 1. I increased the tiling twice on this guy, and then I blurred it a little bit because these are the little waves on the if you look here, you can see it's got some waves. If I turn this off, now it's just kind of like still, like a puddle that's standing still. But actually, I think for this, what I would want to do is actually do a separate blur, I think. And I don't think I want that one blurred to that high. Let's see what that looks like. Doing some experiments in here. Let me just pause that so you guys don't have to watch all this. Actually, I'm gonna abandon that. That's gonna go down a rabbit hole. So after we do our min darken here, we need another normal, and I have this set to default 1. And then I use a normal blend. So then after the level's holding it down, I pull from that normal into the normal background of the normal blend. And then this guy goes into the foreground. And then that split that we made here goes into the mask. If you don't have a mask, it doesn't work. So here it's just the background winning. So then you have to add a mask so that you can blend. And then if I increase this intensity, you'll see that my puddles will be more intense. And it just ends up looking kind of weird. Obviously a puddle is very low to the floor. So we want it to be really shallow, so maybe even like 0.5. You can play around with it. Now this isn't like the best way, I would probably spend more time on this, but just to kind of show you guys. And then if you lose some of the waves, you can turn the min darken up, I think. Yeah, to bring back some of the waves. Obviously not too much because it's not like the ocean. We'll just go back to there. And then the normal blend is going to plug into the true, and then the original normal is just going to split down into the false. That way, if the boolean is set to false, it plays the normal. So to recap, if you want the wetness, turn it on. And then if you don't want the puddle stuff, you can just click on this normal blend and shift D it to disable it. And then you have like the original moist stuff. And obviously if you don't want it to be that wet, you can increase this uniform color here to kind of, but then that kind of looks kind of weird. So be careful. And that's how you get 2 versions. Or I guess 3 if you want to count dry, wet, and then wet with puddles. I think that's it, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, what you guys think of this new workflow where we kind of disable everything and enable it as we go. Do you guys like that better? Do you think that goes by faster? I think it does. Oh, metallic. Okay, for the metallic, we are pulling our mask for our screws. I'm not going to go back and show you where it is. You guys should know where it is. Just follow. We use it several times. That goes into the background here of the blend. Then we have a uniform white color. And then we take the dirt mask. And then we subtract that dirt mask from our screw mask. Because the dirt is not metallic, so we want to reduce the metallic. We want to reduce the dirt. And then that plugs into our metallic. Sorry, that was the last thing I've missed. Okay, so I'm not sure if I'll do 1 video or 2 videos for this, but yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys like this new tutorial approach, this new flow, or do you prefer the old way? Hopefully this is faster, and hopefully I don't waste you guys' time like I'm doing right now by talking. Okay, peace.